Alright, guys, it is me, El Trader Goof, coming at you from the AlphaStockLabs community. So, coming at you with another weekly Sunday prep. Today is um, November the 2nd, so gonna go ahead and dive right into what to sort of expect going into this week, right? So, we did hear over the weekend that China and Trump did come up to a deal with. So, with that being said, that might end up, maybe we might see a little jump in the futures markets that might lead to a gap up going into the New York session going into tomorrow, right? So, going right into it, right? Last week we did see SPY gap up to start the week off rallying higher, right? So we can see we gapped up, rallied here higher, making new all-time high on Wednesday at 689.70s, right? So that's gonna be something that we are going to be looking at to see if we do break that going into this week and make new all-time highs, right? So once we did hit that all-time high, we can see sort of that trend sort of break down on the hourly time frame. So let's go ahead and dive into the hourly time frame, right? So Monday we gapped up, right? Rally, nice little rally uptrend. Then going into that FOMC right around that 2 p.m., we can see where we sort of broke that trend and just sort of start to see more downside here, right? So Thursdays and Friday's price action did hold right above our opening range of Monday, right? So that's something that we're going to be watching for going into this week, right? So it's right now we're going to see that sort of acting as that area of point of control going into that next week, right around that 683, 684 area to be watching for, right? So man, sort of want to just see buyers this week overall just hold above the 69s area, which is going to be that Friday low slash over or last week's low, right? So we can see it still hasn't quite filled that gap here to the downside from Monday. So that's the reason why we want to see if we can hold above as well. 679.24. If we do break that, we might end up filling this gap here to the downside completely. So something to watch for. The overall gap is going to be from the 673s all the way up to 682s, right? So something to watch for there is will SPY hold above those 679s here for buyers, right? So going into Monday, of course, something that we do want to watch for um, is if we will break above the 685s area. We want to see those 685s break above and sort of hold above, right? So we want to be trading above the point of control area, right? So if we do end up seeing futures gap up, ideally I won't be surprised if we do end up gapping above um, the 683, 685s area. It's definitely something that we would definitely love to see buyers sort of see if we can hold above there, So going forward, that's definitely an area that we want to see going into SPY, right? So apart from that, if you're looking for quick in and outs, we want to see hold above that 681, break below that 681. You can get yourself a nice little 680 put, whatever it might be. Going into Monday as well, if we're holding above those 685s going into Monday, ideally you want to sort of target previous day's highs to have a nice idea of a area to target, right? Um, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into gold. Gold's going to be another one. So based on gold, we can see gold was previously just after week, it was just making new highs, new all-time highs, etc. As we can see here based off the daily time frame, following that 5 EMA, staying above that 20 EMA, trading above that 200 essentially, and now going into this week, we can see that gold held right below those 171s here. from Monday, right? So vice versa from SPY gapping up, gold did the opposite where it gapped down here to 171s, right? And all throughout the week, we see how those 171s were well respected, never giving us that break above it, you see. So with gold, that's going to be something that we will be watching for going into this week, right? So right around that 171s, acting as that point of control there for gold going into this week. Looking at the hourly time frame, we can see so since Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, nice little uptrend, right? But sort of just staying right below that 171 area, acting as we can see as a nice little point of control area, right? So definitely worth watching there. We can get back above that 171 and sort of get back above 172 above, which should be right around that 200 EMA based off this hourly time frame. Now we can also see what seems to be here almost an ascending triangle, right? So something to watch for. We want to see for buyers is break above this area, break above that 200 EMA and stay above that 200 EMA to sort of give us that gap fill to its upside from Monday, right? So worst case scenario, if we do see rejection right around that 371, so we might end up getting a breakdown here to the downside and then possibly go ahead into test 357s or 358s, which is going to be right around that last week's low for gold here, guys. So something that we want to watch for there. Next one that we're going to go ahead and watch here is going to be Plantier, right? Plantier has earnings on Monday. They do report earnings after hours for Monday, right? So, on the daily, we can see that last week low of 186. 186, 78, right? Is going to be an area that we want to see us sort of hold above here for Plantier. Why? Because we can see how going into last week, right, that area was well respected, right? So 187.57, 186.78. So low of day for Tuesday is going to be that low of week going into this week for that we want to see us hold above, and we can see why. Because that area right there, what do we see? Was a well area where we saw last earnings gapped up, rallied higher, market shifted to the downside, and now as we were going into this earnings, we can see how we were slower, just consolidating in a range bound, right? So once we broke out of that range, what do we see? Going into last week's FOMC week, we gapped up, and because of that gap up, we are now trading above right around that 186, 187 area where we were seeing the buyers sort of just having trouble breaking above that, right? So that's the reason why we wanted to see those 187 sort of hold here going into this week, right? Going towards that earning. So if we go into the hourly time frame, what do we see? Right around this 197s is going to be what we wanted to see acting here as that point of control for Plantier, right? This 197s, 198s is something that you want to watch going forward, right? So as well, these 194s is going to be an area that we want to see buyers hold above. Why? Because that's going to be where we get that breakup. You can see once we broke out of that range of that 186, we went higher. Nice little pullback, right? Then we broke back above, right? So with that being said, that area is now something that we want to see these buyers hold for these 194s going forward, staying above those 198s as well. So if going into Monday, something that we want to see for buyers is break above this one, not this one, just 201.50s, 201.50s, 201.60s roughly. It's something where you want to see buyers start to break above to go ahead and test our 52-week high and now all-time high there. So something to be considering about if you're looking for those calls. We do not recommend holding anything through earnings know what your risk is, risk what you're willing to lose, go about it from there, right? So it's going to be something that we will be looking at for Palantir. Next one that we're going to go ahead and do is going to be HIMS. HIMS is going to be another one that we've been sort of just rinsing and repeating, right? So looking at HIMS, right, what are we sort of seeing here on HIMS, right? We're seeing how HIMS over the past couple earnings, last three earnings, have just traded well above our 200 EMA, right? So with that being above our 200 EMA, what have we seen going forward, right? We can see how we've created some type of demand, right? Every time price action sort of comes back down and tests right around into these 41s, price action, where we see buyers step in and go up back up high, right? So going here into earnings, that's something that we want to see if we're going to sort of see that same reaction, right? But notice how on Friday, right, we're already sort of trying to attempt hold that 200 EMA, so definitely something worth watching if we lose that 200 EMA on that daily time frame here going forward here, guys. So now look at that hourly time frame. We want to see, right, based off the hourly time frame, we'll see all last week. So there's been a nice little downtrend, right? So going into this week, we want to see will we break above this downtrend here, right? Or are we going to just see more downside going into that earnings, right? So definitely something to be watching for here going into this week. So ideally, we want to see us break above these 46s, hold above those 46s for buyers. If we do hold above those 46s for buyers, then what we're looking for is to then now see if we can test Friday's high, right? Test Friday's high of that 47.24, that's 25s, break out of that downtrend channel, and then go ahead and test into that 200 EMA if given, right? Or let's say worst case scenario, if we lose these 45s, then essentially we'll probably go ahead and test into that Thursday low of right around that 44s area for him. So a couple ideas to play for and just, going for him. Next one that we're going to go ahead and sort of look at is going to be Shop. Shop does have earnings, I believe, Tuesday. Yep, Tuesday. So when we look at the daily, we can see that we have a nice gap up from last earnings, right? So something worth watching. Based off that gap up that we had, we've just been a nice staying in that nice little uptrend, right? So still uptrending, still respecting the gap here that has yet to be filled to the downside, right? One thing that we do mention, gaps don't have a date expiration or a date that it has to be filled. It can take days, months, weeks, years, whatever it might be, right? So it just all depends on what the price action is for that particular stock. So of course, daily levels to watch for are going to be 170, 171, 171.69, which is going to be Friday's low, right? And then also watching for a break above 182.19 for a new all-time high if given going towards earnings, right? So if we go into the hourly time frame, right? Something that we want to watch for, right? If we're looking for more downside, we want to see, okay, will we break below Friday's low, right? Will we break below Friday's low of 171.69s? So then sort of go ahead and test down into these 168s, right around that 169 area, right? So, which it would be right around going to test into that 200 EMA based on Shop. Now, if we're looking for calls, right? Essentially for calls, we want to see buyers sort of break back above that 5 EMA and 20 EMA and gain back buying here to the upside. So essentially we're looking for a break above 175 slash 126s, guys. Break above that, then we can sort of target into that Friday's high of that 179 slash 176s here. So next one that we are gonna also be watching for is AMD. Another one that a lot of people might be watching for going into this week. Now, when we look at the daily, right, first we can notice is there is a gap up, right, from the beginning of October. Definitely something to be watching for, right? So those that are learning patterns, right? So some of you might be wondering, hey, is this a rising wedge, right? So technically it's not going to be a rising wedge because essentially you would like to see these points sort of coming together, right? So to create that wedge, right? Here you're sort of just seeing more of a channel pattern here, right? So just staying within, right? These you don't see are ending points coming together. So not essentially a rising wedge, more so a channel pattern. So also, when we do look at the daily time frame, right? Gap up, right? So remember what I just said before. Gaps don't have a date or when they need to be filled. Doesn't matter. But based on the AMD, what do we see? That channel. We see MACD sort of just slowly curling, right? Bars slowly decreasing. RSI. The higher we go, what do you see with RSI? Slowly decreasing, right? So you're seeing that divergence as we're going here with AMD. So definitely worth watching here going into earnings, right? So this price action might be because maybe someone already knows something, or the traders here are sort of just expecting a not so good earnings, right? They might end up missing. Maybe their guidance might not be so good. So it all depends, right? So maybe their spending isn't up to date with what they're expecting to bring back in for revenue and profits, right? So definitely something to watch for AMD. Um, Based off the daily time frame, we are watching to see if we will break below those 252s, right? So something definitely worth watching here. If we go into the hourly time frame, here we go. So we got Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. Sorry. So that 252 is going to be right around that range that we're watching for, right? Reason being is because that's an area where we saw buyers being respected, right? Buyers came back in, not allowing price action to what? Break below that 20 EMA to continue more lower, right? That previous week, not from last week, but the previous week before that, we can see Friday and that nice pop up. We can see our price action sort of never fully broke above up until that power. Power breaks up, boom, leads into that what? That Monday gap up, right? That gap up going into Monday, gap down, not gap down, but we fill that gap down and respect this area, right? So that's the reason why we're watching that 252 area here for AMD going into this week, guys. Now, if we're looking for calls, right? If we're looking for calls, we want to see buyers break back above these 258s. These 258 slash 30s is going to be something that we're going to be watching for with that break above the 5 EMA, breaking above that 20 EMA as well, right? So we can sort of see that sort of breaking above, then we can definitely start to sort of target up into that Friday high day of that, right around that 162s areas, guys. Now, we're looking for puts. Essentially, we're going to be looking at for us to break below that 255, break below that 255, we can target Friday's low of 253.40, guys. So definitely worth watching there for that. Now, next one that we're going to go ahead and go into, Beyond. The Beyond the one meme stock, right? The one meme stock that sort of just saw a nice little spike from almost 2 weeks ago, right? So with that being said, let's sort of see what happened on the here on the daily time frame. Now, daily time frame, we gapped up, right? Gapped up. With that gap up, what do we see on the daily time frame? That created buyers to the upside, right? Broke above that 5 EMA, traded above that 20 EMA as well. Even that 200 EMA for not too long, only for 1 day, right? And that was that 1 day where price action just went up high, up into that 679 to create a 52-week high. So going into daily as well as we are, what do we see? That's over here, gap down, right? That gap down was not filled going forward, right? So here, slowly start to fill, gapped up through a gap, right? So with that being said, what do we see after that price action then comes down? and fills the gaps. We see that. That's the reason why going forward we're watching this 155, because this 155 area is right at the top of this gap up candle, and also fills the gap here to this downside. We see that. So this gap here fills halfway, gaps up, leaving another gap in between a gap. We see that. So low from here, 195. See that? So we created a gap within a gap. So what happened here going into last week, that gap was now filled with the price action here going lower, going as we go into earnings, right? So definitely that's why we're watching this 155 area for buyers to see if they're going to hold. So will buyers, retail traders hold above this 155 area going into the earnings? And despite the Walmart deal, right? So definitely something worth watching for beyond going into this week, right? So you want to see buyers hold above that 155 and see if we can break back above these 170s. If we can break above those 170s, you want to see buyers continue here higher. You want to see buyers go ahead and see if this hourly would test into that 200 EMA, which is sort of you want to see buyers regain back the $2 area here, guys. So definitely worth watching there for that. Now, next one that we're going to watch is Hood. Hood is going to be another one that does have earnings this week. They report on Wednesday, I believe. Yes, so Wednesday they report earnings. Here, what does it look like? So here it looks like Hood might be ready for another breakout, right? So definitely worth watching here. So, one thing that we're definitely going to be watching for here is, okay, will we break above last week's high? Which last week's high is going to be Friday's high of 150.47, right? So definitely something that we're going to be watching for. If we do break above that level, won't be surprised if we then go test all-time highs of 153.86, guys. So definitely worth watching that there. Excuse me. So also, as we go into the daily time frame, I mean, we are on the daily time frame, but on the hourly time frame, something that we're going to be watching for as well. Daily time frame low is going to be 137.25, right? You can see how that low is where we respected that 20 EMA, bounce off that 20 EMA. Going to the hourly time frame, what are we seeing here? Based off here, that 138 area is an area that we're seeing on Thursday where we reversed and buyers step back in, right? So that's the reason why I have this circled in there. So to show you where you get that reversal, we see. Then buyers step in going into Friday, right? Price action from overall Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday, right? From that gap up from Monday, price action stayed above that 200 EMA, right? Which you want to see buyers stay above that 200 EMA for more bullish action, right? So notice over here, this is Thursday. Thursday from the previous week before last week, right? Price action goes up, starts to attempt to get back above that 200 EMA, right? We see that? Going into Friday, price action is now trading above that 200 EMA. So now we see that buyers are now in control. You're looking for more buyers, more bullish trades as we start to trade above most of our EMAs. Above our 225 EMA. And going forward, notice how we respect that 20 EMA. Up until what? Wednesday. Wednesday FOMC. So what are we seeing now? Just coiling. You see how our EMAs are not coiling? When you're looking at that you don't want to sort of be in that price action because if you're seeing your EMAs just quoting that, is telling you that you're just most likely gonna be in a range bound. Notice these wicks on the candles, right? And then as we head towards that 2 p.m., we start to break below, we see. So now you get more of a direction of your candles, price action, based off your EMAs. That's how we keep rejecting that 20 EMA once we break below it. Comes back down into to test into 200 EMA. Here we get this nice little flush, but it doesn't really give us that full momentum to the downside. We then get a reversal. Once we get that reversal, we respect that 138, which is an area where what Friday up the day before Monday's gap up was respected and held. That's the reason why those 138s were respected, and you see buyers step in and reverse to the upside. So going into this week for Monday, definitely worth watching. Want to watch that level, 138s, and also watch Friday's low. Friday's low here, where price action after we popped up, came back, retraced, and held going forward, right? So that 144, 145, there is something that you want to watch for hood here to hold above for buyers. If they can hold above that, by all means, right? So we're looking to do calls. Essentially, what we want to see is break above these 148s, 148.35s roughly, break above that, test into that Friday's high of 150.46s. Now, if we're looking for quick little puts, break below 146.40s to test into Friday's low of 144s, right around that 145s area, right? So nothing too crazy. Remember, we don't recommend holding anything through earnings. Risk what you want, risk what you can lose, and know the risk, right? So as we go forward, next one that we're going to go ahead and look at, it's going to be DraftKings. DraftKings is going to be last but not least. So DraftKings is something to look at. So when we look at the daily time frame, what can we see? DraftKings over the past couple earnings, right? What do we see? Every time or every two earnings, it seems like it comes down into a demand zone, right? So buyers, every time we come into right around this 29.30s area, it seems like buyers always buy it up. We see that. So after almost every two earnings, buyers seem to buy it up, right? So going into this week, that's going to be something that we're looking for. Will buyers start to buy this up going into their earnings? So definitely worth watching for it here for earnings. For DraftKings, we want to see us buyers hold above those 30s to go ahead and go test higher, right? So going to the hourly time frame, overall it looks good. Everything's pointing like we might start to break below or break above this downward channel that we had over the past couple days from last week, right? So definitely worth watching, right? Where we start to break above this downward channel, this downward trend that we've had last week going into earnings. So break above those 30 Friday's high of 30.68 is something that we want to watch for, right? We break above that, hey, watch for buyers to step in and start to go ahead and test higher up into these 32s on DraftKings, guys. Definitely worth watching here. As we can see, zoom out. 32s. Why do we say those 32s? Because here, price action before bounces off there, right? Over here, as we sort of shifted that trend, right? After we broke below those 33s, which is where we break below my 5 EMA, right? My daily 5 EMA. So once we broke that 5 EMA, downtrend. 1 hour time frame. So that's something that we're looking for here to sort of go ahead and break above this downtrend, break above those 3060s to go test into 32s, break above those 32s. Then now we can sort of down test into those 3344s, which is sort of where we sort of start to break down that 5 EMA on that daily. And that's gonna be it for this session here, guys. Something that I do like for DraftKings is gonna be definitely a 32 to 33 Lotto, just because of the fact that we are coming back into that demand zone. It seems like every time we come back down here, it bounces. So definitely worth it. As we mentioned, only risk what you're in to lose on earnings, right? On earnings gambles, earning lottos, whatever you might call it. So definitely go about it there and watch for. Always have a reason behind your trades. Know your risk reward. Whether it's a winning trade, losing trade, it's always going to be a lesson for you as a trader, guys. So happy trading this week of November, and remember to chase your dreams, chase your goals, and we got this, guys. So that's gonna be it for this weekly prep, and happy trading, guys. Oh, Trader Goof out. Thank you guys for joining me.